Madam President, inspired by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and our national vision, we have undertaken bold reforms to improve the lives of our people, even as we recover from the devastating drought that affected our country in 2024. A cornerstone of our strategy is investing in our people, especially the youth. Believing that education is the greatest equalizer, our government introduced free primary and secondary education for all children, recruited a number of teachers to improve the quality of education. We further recognize that a healthy population underpins productivity and inclusive growth. Zambia therefore remains steadfast in its pursuit of health for all, by building resilience, equitable and accessible health systems. We are expanding infrastructure, providing essential supplies, and deploying thousands of health workers to underserved areas, among other interventions. While we recognize the changing landscape in official development assistance, we call on development partners to continue their effort to support HIV/AIDS programs, especially with antiretroviral therapy, so that countries such as Zambia that have made progress in the fight against HIV do not regress on account of funding constraints. We therefore look forward to upcoming World Social Summit in Qatar that will accord us an opportunity to engage on key social development issues and advance social progress, ensuring that no one is left behind in the global sustainable development journey. We urge all member states and development partners to prioritize health spending as a strategic investment, because human capital is the greatest asset of any nation. Madam President, to protect the most vulnerable, Zambia has scaled up safety nets. Our social cash transfer program now reaches over 6.5% households. This and other complementary initiatives such as food security packs and skills training has been crucial in cushioning families from shocks and lifting communities out of extreme poverty. Madam President, we believe that empowering women is more than just a moral duty. When women thrive, families prosper and nations advance. We therefore place women and youth at the center of our transformation through affirmative measures that enhance women's participation in decision-making and protect their careers and families. We continue to lead efforts to eliminate gender-based violence and child marriage through strengthening laws and community awareness programs. We call on the international community to redouble efforts towards gender equality, especially as we commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Women's Conference and Beijing Program of Action. Madam President, Zambia's economy, like many other developing countries, has endured turbulent times in recent years. Upon assuming office, our government's highest priority was to restore macroeconomic stability, which we are steadily delivering. We implemented difficult but necessary reforms to restructure our public debt in order to create fiscal space. This debt restructuring, alongside our ongoing IMF-supported program, has put Zambia firmly on a path to debt sustainability and renewed investor confidence. However, stabilizing the economy is only the first step. We equally focused on reigniting growth and economic transformation through diversification. Madam President, the existential threat of climate change looms over all our aspirations. Despite our minimal contribution to global emissions, many developing countries often experience increased frequency of climate shocks, such as droughts and destructive floods. In this regard, we look ahead with a hope to the upcoming COP30 in Brazil, which will mark the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. This milestone conference must be a turning point from promises to action. Zambia has submitted its revised National Determined Contribution, NDC 3.0, and we therefore encourage other countries to do the same with enhanced ambition to be within the reach of the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. We must act now to limit global warming and to adapt to its effects. Let us summon the political will for bold action that safeguards the planet for future generations. Madam President, 5 years to the year 2030, only 17% of SDGs are on track. We also note that several developing countries remain fiscally constrained in directing sufficient resources towards SDGs on account of increasing debt burdens, highlighting the need to strengthen mechanisms for resolving debt crises. Against this backdrop, Zambia was privileged to have co-facilitated the outcome document of the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, which unanimously adopted the Sevilla Commitment. This outcome has renewed global consensus to close the $4 trillion annual SDG financing gap. It is now time to move from commitments to action. We call on all nations, development banks, and the private sector to align their policies and investments with the SDGs. Official development assistance, a lifeline for less developed countries, must be protected. There is need to scale up domestic resource mobilization, embracing innovative financing mechanisms, tackling illicit financial flows, and promoting private sector involvement. Madam President, for too long, the current international financial architecture has perpetuated structural inequalities, particularly for developing countries. The post-war institutions designed to promote global economic stability and growth no longer reflect today's geopolitical and economic realities. Many African countries continue to bear the weight of unsustainable debt, limited access to concessional financing, and the effects of global shocks beyond their control, from climate change to pandemics and global conflicts. We therefore welcome the commitments from various stakeholders for comprehensive reform of the global financial system. This reform should include governance reform of global financial institutions to strengthen representation of developing countries in international economic decision-making. Zambia further welcomes initiatives such as the Borrowers Forum to ensure fair and timely resolution of debt. Madam President, Zambia is both a least developed country, LDC, and a landlocked, or as we prefer, land-linked developing country, an LLDC. These two categories of countries face unique structural challenges. In July 2025, Zambia was privileged to host the LDC Future Forum in Lusaka, whose insights on building resilience to shocks and the need for innovation to address challenges were empowering. During the conference, our Republican President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, underscored the need for LDCs to build resilience by being more proactive and self-reliant. As a landlocked country, Zambia welcomes the Awaza Program of Action, which prioritizes structural transformation, trade facilitation, regional connectivity, resilience, and ICT infrastructure, which reflect our own priorities. We also welcome the Awaza's call for innovative financing. Landlocked need not mean isolated and encased. I repeat, Madam President, landlocked need not mean isolated and encased. As our President fondly states, LLDCs can become land-linked rather than landlocked, and we in Zambia are committed to making this vision a reality. Allow me to appeal, Madam President, that even as we reform the office of the High Representative for landlocked, for less developed countries, landlocked countries, and SIDS must be maintained. It is of imperative importance. Madam President, the theme of this session, Better Together, also compels us to reflect on the United Nations' readiness to address today's complex challenges. The Security Council's current composition and working methods reflect a bygone era and are overdue for reform. Decisions on critical peace and security issues are all too often stalled by the veto power of a few, even when the wider membership speaks clearly. Africa, with 1.4 billion people, still has no permanent seat, a historical injustice that must be rectified. Zambia therefore reaffirms the Common Africa position on Security Council reform as set out in the El Zulwini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration. We call for comprehensive reform that expands both permanent and non-permanent membership to make the Council more equitable, effective, and reflective of today's world. Madam President, Excellencies, 80 years ago, the world emerged from war with a promise to never again allow division and destruction to define our collective future. That promise is being tested today. Let this 80th General Assembly be remembered as a turning point where the world chose solidarity over silence, justice over inertia, and unity over division. We must act not out of fear, but out of hope, not in isolation, but in solidarity, as we are better together. Madam President, Your Excellencies, I thank you.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Zambia.